Mama! The voice came again like an echo rippling across a midnight lake during a storm. Why did they burn my name into the stone pillar, Mama? Mirembe knelt at the edge of Lake Tanganyika. Her dress clung to her body, soaked and stained with mud, though it was hard to tell whether the wetness came from her tears or the blood trickling down between her thighs. The child stood beside her, no more than 7 eyes with no whites, skin blacker than coal, yet somehow glowing, as if lit from within. Glittering scales shimmered across its back. Its hands were webbed. Seaweed clung to its feet. And still, it called her Mama. She turned away. She couldn't answer, couldn't bring herself to say the truth, that up on the hill, the entire village was gathered, burning its name into stone, praying for its soul to vanish from this world. The child placed its hand on her belly on the very place it had once slept, curled up inside her for 6 long months. I'm not a demon, Mama. I'm a god. I just needed my father's blood to awaken. Mirembe broke down. A mother forced to choose between the love she bore her child and the last shred of humanity she still had left. And then through the cold mist rising from the water, a lullaby drifted up from the lake's depths. A song only the dead would understand. That's how it began on the night of the black moon 7 years ago. Chapter 1. The Black Moon of the Barren Woman. 7 years ago, Lake Tanganyika was as cold as a stone womb. No moon, no wind. And the elders said when the moon hides, the ancestors rise. They walk out of the water searching for those who owe them life. Mirembe was 33 then. She no longer ovulated on schedule. She ovulated despair. She had stopped tracking her cycles, stopped hoping every time her period was late. All that remained was a dull ache below her belly, like someone had stuffed a rock inside her every time someone shouted, "I'm pregnant." She had prayed Begedwekesa to get checked, but he only barked back. You think I'm the problem? Everyone knows it's you. And it was true. In the village of Itula, if a man had no children, it was the woman who lacked blessing. They called her dried roots, a knife with no handle, a jackfruit tree that gives no sap. So when Nokulu, the blind seer who lived at the edge of the village, came for her that night, Mirembe didn't say no. There is a way, the old woman rasped. But you must give your body not to a man, but to what was once a man. Her voice cracked like bark splitting in the cold, colder than the owl's cry at midnight. Mirembe didn't ask questions, didn't care who or what. She only needed one thing, a child. They met beneath the Ukuta Hills, where Lake Tanganyika kissed the shore with mist as thick as knotted hair. That night, Mirembe went barefoot. She brought nothing, nothing but her pain, and a body that had remained untouched, though nearly 20 years a wife. The women were already there, dressed in black, forming a silent circle, At its center, an ancient spring, a hidden pool where the ancestors were once offered blood in exchange for rain. Nokulu lifted a skull-shaped jug and poured its contents over Mirembe's belly. "This womb," she said, "has been silent too long. Tonight it will sing again, but not in a human tongue." Mirembe shivered, not from the cold, but from something calling to her, a sound rising from the pool. Part moan, part fury, all hunger. She stepped into the water, up to her thighs, then her waist, then her chest. No one touched her, but something did. Something long, slick, cold, coiling from beneath. It had no hands, but it knew how to touch, to stroke, to press, to hold, to enter. Mirembe didn't scream, didn't resist. She closed her eyes and let it take her, as if for the first time someone truly wanted her. When the ritual ended, the water turned violet. The wind rose and Mirembe collapsed. She woke at dawn naked on the shore, sore in every limb, as if she'd spent the night in some cursed ecstasy. Around her navel, a strange bruise, the shape of a serpent coiled around her womb, its head resting just above her uterus. Nokulu knelt beside her, placed a hand on her belly, and whispered, "You've been chosen. The child will call you Mama. But know this, it is not just flesh and blood, it is a pact." From above, the sun's first light broke through the clouds, but no one saw the mark on her stomach. No one heard the whisper rising from beneath her skin. Only Mirembe knew her womb was no longer hers. Chapter 2. The Faceless Lover. Ever since that night at the sacred lake, Mirembe began to dream. Not fleeting, restless dreams like before, but deep, endless ones. Dreams where time stood still and space dissolved into nothing. She often found herself floating through a field of silver reeds soaked in dew, the mist thick as mother's milk drawn from a sleeping breast. No sky above, no ground below, only vapor and the sound of a flute, soft, broken like someone blowing through lips without skin. She never saw his face, but he was always there. No form, no shadow, no eyes or mouth, yet he was felt intimately. Something would crawl up the back of her neck, glide down her spine like a slow serpent, tracing each muscle, each place untouched for far too long. He had no voice, and yet he whispered, not to her ears, but through her blood, as if his language was the rhythm of her own heartbeat. By day, Mirembe tried to live as any woman would, but her body refused to stay normal. Her skin turned soft and damp, like moss pulled from water. She smelled different, earthy and sweet like wild herbs after a storm. Her hair, once dry and brittle, now flowed smooth and weightless, as though someone washed it each night with sacred leaves. People noticed, not because she was barren anymore, but because she no longer looked untouched. She looked unlocked. One old neighbor, eyes sharp with suspicion, once stood at her door and spat. Yes, you're beautiful, but that beauty, it doesn't belong to the living. Mirembe said nothing. The woman didn't know, didn't understand. This body now held a spirit, an ancient force, alive but impure. Then one day, Wekesa came home. He carried a gazelle slung over his shoulder, sweat and blood mixed on his hands, their scent rising sharp as he touched Mirembe's blouse. He was drunk, rough, dry as always, but that night he wanted her. Maybe because she looked different. Maybe because other men had begun to look at her too. He pulled her close, whispered in her ear. But Mirembe trembled not from desire, but fear. Fear of what he might touch. Fear of what now slept inside her. As Wekesa's hand brushed against her chest, the lamp went out. Darkness swallowed the room, and then cold. A sudden gust from nowhere. Not the window, not the door. It felt, born from the ground itself. Wekesa staggered back, voice shaking. "Who's there? Who's in this house?" Mirembe sat up, her eyes wide in the dark. She didn't speak to him. She only placed her hand on her stomach. "Don't touch me. He's sleeping, and he doesn't like anyone else touching his mother." Wekesa backed away, as if something were staring into his soul, peeling him open from the inside. He left before midnight, took nothing but his breath and the sour scent of fear. That night Mirembe dreamed again. But this time, no more fog, only fire. She stood on a stone altar, blood dripping from her fingertips, falling to the rock below, forming the shape of a fetus, twisted, horned, scaled, and a voice sang out, not his, a woman's voice, low, cold, each word, deliberate. Humans have forgotten the water, forgotten what bore them. Your womb is the doorway. She turned, tried to find who spoke, but there was no one. Then a hand touched her belly again. This time, not caressing, gripping. If you love him, he becomes a god. If you fear him, he becomes a demon. Choose, mother of mine. Mirembe shot awake, soaked in sweat, her mat beneath her damp with cold fear. And under the covers, she felt it. Something had just slipped out of her body, slippery, cold, soft, like a snake, freshly shed of its skin. She turned on the light, nothing, but beneath her pillow a flute carved from bone, small, white, smooth as the finger of a fetus. And then, one last whisper before sunrise. He's growing each night, and he's learning to speak. He will call you Mama, with all the blood that has ever flowed through your body. Chapter 3. The Womb That Whispers. Ever since the bone flute appeared under her pillow, Mirembe had stopped being human. Not in the biological sense, she still ate, still breathed, still forced a smile when the neighbors passed. But inside, there was another world. Something lived inside her womb, not just feeding, but feeding on her memories, her faith, even her will to resist. The pregnancy grew at an unnatural pace. In the first week, her belly only tightened slightly. By the second, it looked 4 months along. And by the third, she could feel movement. But it didn't kick. It didn't roll. It slithered like a creature fully aware it was alive inside a warm cocoon and ready to tear its way out. She no longer dreamed. She listened. Every night from deep within, a voice echoed soft as a breeze, clear as a bell, childlike, breathless, emotionless, yet undeniable. "Mama!" She bolted upright, clutching her belly ears, straining like she was answering a call from a world beyond her own. "Mama, don't be afraid, I'm just learning how to talk to you," she screamed, but the house swallowed the sound whole. Only the drip-drip from the thatched roof replied louder than her prayer. Wekesa never returned after that night. The villagers claimed he'd gone off to hunt, but Mirembe knew he ran. She began speaking to the baby, not out of madness, but because it spoke back. She bit her tongue, pressed her stomach, dug into her navel, and the voice grew clearer. "I'm not angry with you, Mama. I understand. Everyone fears what they cannot create. But you created me, didn't you?" She broke down in tears, not from pain but shame. She didn't know what was growing inside her, but never in her life had she felt so loved. A love twisted, strange, unconditional, without explanation. On the 25th day after the ritual, she looked at herself in the mirror. Dark circles around her eyes, cracked lips, ashen skin, but her belly was full pink, glowing, the last flicker of light left in her body. Then she saw it. Her reflection didn't match. Her face was there, clear, but her belly was missing. She turned the mirror, wiped it down, looked again. Still gone, as if her womb had slipped out of the physical world. She told no one. But by morning, the village was already whispering. A woman gathering firewood swore she heard lullabies floating from the old house. But Mirembe had no husband, no guests. A child said it saw another child by the lake, but with no face. Then people started dying. An old woman never woke again. Her eyes wide open, frozen like she'd seen a truth too great to speak aloud. A toddler convulsed the moment he touched Mirembe's belly during the village festival. The people grew quiet, distant. They didn't speak of it, but they kept their distance. No one came asking for dried fish. No one offered greetings. Even the little girl who once played in Mirembe's yard turned her face away in silence. Inside that hollow home, Mirembe stared at the ceiling palms over her belly and whispered through a choke, "What are you?" The answer came soft. "I'm what you've waited for all your life. Just not in the form you imagined." That night, her belly began to glow. A soft blue light like incense smoke rose from her navel, casting a gentle halo across the clay walls. And the unborn child began to sing. No lyrics, no melody, just a hum, ancient, older than language itself. The next morning, Mirembe went to the village well. The crowd parted like water. No one wanted to stand close. An elder, trembling, mumbled, "That thing. It casts no shadow. That womb doesn't belong to the living anymore. Chapter 4. The Child with No Shadow. Rain poured down on the village of Itula, like the sky's water broke. There was no thunder, only flashes of lightning slicing the dark in jagged pulses across thatched rooftops, tree trunks, and Mirembe's pale, pain-struck face as the first contraction hit. No one came to help. They heard her. They knew she was in labor. They heard the cries echoing from the last house on the path. But no one stepped near, because in the rain they heard a child laughing, though the baby wasn't due, because in the air they smelled rotting lakeweed rising from her clay roof, though there was no wind. The pain spread from belly to spine down to her heels, as if her body was shedding its first skin to make way for something else. Something not human. There was no trickle of blood. It gushed, dark as swamp water, thick as fish blood, and from between her legs a being emerged. It didn't cry. It simply breathed, soft, slow, certain. Mirembe collapsed, eyes clenched shut, but she knew it was watching her. Not with eyes, with awareness. A tether between womb and soul. She didn't have to look to know its eyes were voids. No whites. Just black like the lake at midnight. She didn't have to touch to feel its skin slick as soap foam, cold as sacred soil after a cleansing rain. And she didn't need anyone to tell her. It cast no shadow. Lightning flashed through the door. Her body threw a twisted silhouette against the wall. The child cast nothing. "Mama?" The voice again, but this time not from inside her. Mirembe opened her eyes. The child had crawled to her chest. It didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't nurse. It simply laid a tiny hand on her heart and listened. "Mama, I finally made it out." It didn't need to learn language. It was born fluent, not in words, but in blood. Mirembe didn't scream, didn't shake, wasn't afraid anymore. She just lay there, soaked in sweat and blood, hand trembling as it touched the top of its head, soft as water. And for a moment so still it felt holy. The world paused just long enough for a mother to meet the child, born from another realm. But peace never stays long in this world. By morning, as Mirembe wrapped her baby in her mother's old embroidered cloth, ready to take him to the village well, she heard the shouting. Screams, shouts, a storm of human noise. A boy burst into her home. They're burning his name at the stone pillar by the shrine. They wrote it in chicken blood to cast him out. Mirembe ran. She saw the villagers crowding the ancient stone, the one carved with the names of honored ancestors. But today, they carved her son's name with knives, dipped fingers in blood, lit flames. An old rite to cleanse the world with fire and fear. It's not human. It casts no shadow. It'll kill us all! Burn it! Mirembe stepped into the chaos, soaked hair stuck to her face, clutching the baby like a shield forged from all she had left. She didn't scream with her voice. She screamed with her eyes, with the tremble in her knees, with the silent howl in her chest. "I don't need you to call him human. I only need him to call me mother." The crowd fell still. 1 second stretched into a century. The wind stopped. The rain held its breath. And from the baby's tiny hand, a flicker of soft blue light rose into the sky. Light from a child who did not belong to this world. That night, Mirembe did not return home. She wrapped her son in black cloth and walked to the edge of Lake Tanganyika, where she had once been chosen. She sat and sang, not a lullaby, but a song for the forsaken. The child placed his hand on her belly, once a cradle, now an empty grave. He didn't ask why the village hated him, didn't curse the father who fled, didn't cry. He only asked one thing. "Mama, if I become a god someday, will you still hold me?" Mirembe held him tighter. She didn't answer, because to her, he had already been a god since the first time he whispered, "Mama." Chapter 5. When the child became a god, 7 years had passed since the wind cracked over Lake Tanganyika, and now the village of Itula was dying of thirst in the middle of flood season. The river was dry. The fish wouldn't spawn. Eyes were red from waiting on rains that never came. The ground split open like the skin of old women who'd died unjustly. No one spoke of the strange child anymore. They thought it was dead. They hoped so. But fear still simmered whenever the wind blew from the lake. Then one night, Nakalu returned. The blind seer. Hair white as ash. Voice brittle as cracked bronze. But her words dropped like stones into an empty well. To live, you must beg to drink. You must pay to be forgiven. You must invite back the one who walks against his own shadow. Silence blanketed the courtyard. They knew who she meant, but no one dared say his name. The very next day, Mirembe returned. No announcement, no rage, just silence and a boy 7 years old walking beside her. The boy said nothing, looked at no one, but every shadow twisted as he passed, as if the light itself recoiled from his skin. Wekesa was there too, thin now, bent eyes no longer full of fury. Only haunted fog, the look of a man staring at the ghost he once abandoned. Mirembe stepped into the circle, lifted her son's chin with steady hands. "This is my child and your only salvation. He will bring the rain. But he has one condition." Gasps swarmed the crowd like birds in panic. "There must be a sacrifice. Not a stranger, not one of you, but the one who made him and left him behind." Wekesa raised his head, met her eyes. No words needed. He understood. Mirembe didn't tremble, the boy didn't blink. He simply stepped forward and placed his hand on Wekesa's chest, right where a husband once slept beside a woman he never truly touched. "Father, I'm not angry, but your blood is the final call, so the water will know where to return." No one stopped him. No one cried for Wekesa. Maybe they hated him. Maybe they feared the child. Or maybe they just wanted the rain more than they wanted a man. Wekesa knelt, didn't weep, only looked at his son and said, "You may be a god, but don't forget you were once the child of a man." The boy didn't answer. He reached beneath Mirembe's shawl and pulled out the bone flute, placed it to his lips. The sound rose low, deep, like the moan of the lake's forgotten belly. Wekesa fell soft like grass, folding under a wind. No blood, no wound, just silence and a heart that stopped beating. Thunder cracked. And then rain. The village erupted. They lifted their faces, laughed, wept, danced. But Mirembe didn't move. The boy turned to her, those obsidian eyes holding the weight of galaxies. "Did I do the right thing, Mama?" She knelt, held him, didn't speak, because some truths don't need words. From the center of the storm, a blue light rose from the lake, coiling like a water dragon around the boy's body. No one could hold him, no one could stop it. He walked into the lake as if walking home. No farewell, only rising water, and a mother still on the shore, arms around an empty belly, but eyes fuller than they'd ever been. And ever since that day, every time the drought came, the people of Itula lit a lantern by the lake and whispered, "Child of the water, if you can still hear your mother's voice, send us a single drop of rain. Some children are born out of love, some out of hatred, and some are born from the silence of an entire village." When a mother dares to love what the world calls a monster, sometimes that monster is the only god who ever remembers her name. Not every god sits on a throne. Some once lay curled in the womb of a woman the world chose to forget. Subscribe now. Don't miss the stories even gods are afraid to tell outside a dream. Tales of Black, where folklore bleeds truth.